Good morning, children. Hope I am audible to you. So, we have completed the Tiger King the other week. And what I plan to start with today is the last lesson. The last lesson is the first chapter that appears in your Flamingo textbook. I've already mentioned all these things yesterday to you through the WhatsApp account. I have shared all these details. I hope you all are ready with the textbook right in front of you. So, wish you a very wonderful day first of all. So, moving on with the lesson, the last lesson. We have a French writer here, the French writer Alphonse Daudet. The last sound T is not pronounced. The name is, you have to pronounce this word as Alphonse Daudet. He's the French novelist and short story writer. Here in the textbook of yours, it is written he's a French novelist and short story writer. He's not only these, but even a playwright and a poet too. So, Alphonse Daudet. Remember, he is the writer. Okay, Alphonse Daudet. And this man, he first started his career as a schoolmaster. And later on, he joined his brother and there he worked as a journalist and then switched on to writing. So we have to know this Alphonse Daudet as a French novelist, short story writer, a poet and a playwright too. And this lesson, the last lesson, is set in the days of Franco-Prussian War. Even this is very important because this is the context that is being mentioned in the lesson. Okay? Franco-Prussian War. Franco, you already know what Franco refers to. It is France. Okay? So Franco refers to the country France and then Prussia. Prussia, right now we don't have a Prussia as such. Right now, instead Prussia at that time, it was a combination of Germany, Poland and parts of Austria. All these places together were referred to as Prussia. Okay? So, the context is this. France was having a war with Prussia. And the year in which this war occurred is given here. 1870 to 1871. It was in this time that the Prussians actually attacked France. And this war, the after effect of the war in the country France, that is what is the theme of the lesson. Okay? And in this war, Prussia was led by Bismarck. You might know, you might have learned in your lessons, Otto von Bismarck. This word is referred to using the sound F. Okay? So Otto von Bismarck. He was the statesman who led the Prussians in this war. And this man, you might have learned that he is the one who is behind the unification of Germany in the year 1871. You might have learned in your history classes. Okay? So remember, Franco-Prussian War, that is the context. And Prussia was led by the statesman Otto von Bismarck. And in this war, what happened is that France was defeated by Prussians. And as a compromise, what happens is that French districts of Alsace and Lorraine, it passed into the Prussian hands. Okay? So, which all districts? Alsace and Lorraine. So, these districts was passed on into the Prussian hands. So, naturally, the people over there will have to obey the instructions being given by the German army or else the Prussian army there. Isn't it? So, what is the after effect of this war? That is what you're going to learn. And in this chapter, the after effect of this war in the school life of a boy. That is what the theme is. Okay? So the protagonist of this lesson, or else the main hero of this lesson is, main hero is another person, but the protagonist of this lesson is France, a schoolboy. So how the result of this war affected the school life of the boy Franz, that is what we are going to learn. And we have a main hero here. His name is Messier Hamel. Messier Hamel. He is the central character of this lesson. And this one, Messier, see? M-O-N-S-I-E-U-R. This is actually the French word instead of the Indian word Mr. We refer to a person as Mr. so-and-so, isn't it? So same thing. In French, we refer to it as Messier. So the master of a particular school. That is the central hero of this lesson, and his name is Messier Hamel. And in the textbook, it always appears as M. Hamel. Okay, it is Messier Hamel. He happens to be the central character of this particular lesson. So I hope these ideas are clear for you. This is the introduction for you. So as you move on with the first part of the lesson, what you are going to see is this boy, Franz, a very lazy boy he is. As usual, he is on the way to his school. So usually when you enter a school, before the class starts, you know what are the different noises that comes up, isn't it, from the school. Children, the way they talk, how it is being heard outside the campus, all these things you can very well understand, isn't it? So the boy is expecting such a noise and is on the way to his school. So there, what he happens is that it's just the opposite that is going on. It was really quite like that of a Sunday morning. On that particular day in which this boy is on the way to his school, he felt as if something is really different. So it's not like the usual working day. Some sort of changes are surely there. Why? Because it is so quiet. So why is it so? The boy is really confused. And at last he reaches the class. And what are the changes that he notices and why those changes occur? Okay? That is what we are going to learn. Can we start with? Okay. I started for school very late that morning and was in great dread of scolding, especially because Messier Hamel had said that he would question us on participles. And I did not know the first word about them. Even it's a problem of we people, isn't it? That is, here, 1 minute, here I refers to Franz. Okay? The boy Franz, he started for school very late. He was already late in the morning and he was in a dread of scolding. Dread of scolding means he was really afraid. He was really afraid. Why? Because his master, Messier Hamel, had told that he'll be questioning the children on participles. Even you'll be really afraid, isn't it? When teachers ask you to get ready with the portions, they'll be questioning you one by one. At that time, you'll also be afraid, isn't it? If you haven't learned properly, at that time, naturally, you're afraid because you will be standing among all your friends and you'll have to stand for so long if you're not going to answer. All these things happens. Okay. So, Franz started very late that day and you could see that he was really afraid. Why? Because his master is going to ask questions based on participles. Grammar portion, you can very well understand what it is, what the situation is, isn't it? He's really afraid. And he was afraid because he hasn't learned anything at all. He didn't know a single word about the participles. So he was really afraid. For a moment, I thought of running away and spending the day out of doors. Even we have the tendency, isn't it? If we don't like to go to school, especially on a day in which the questions will be asked and we are not ready for that, at that time we'll also feel like just moving away from the school. Let me spend my day outdoors rather than going to school. So the same thought came in the mind of the boy too. It was so warm, so bright. See, have a look at the different things that attracts the boy to keep himself away from the school. It is a very warm day, so bright a day. And see, the birds were chirping at the edge of the woods, and in the open field back of the sawmill, the Prussian soldiers were drilling. So this point is really important for you because here we have a question answer. The question is this one: what are the different things that prevented little Franz from going to school? What are the different things that prevented Franz from going to school? The first point is that it was a warm day, so bright a day, and you could see the birds were chirping at the edge of the woods or else the forest, and in the open field back of the sawmill, the Prussian soldiers were drilling. Drilling here means having their parade. So it was very nice to have a look at the parade of them, of the soldiers. So he preferred to move out of the school rather than being there in the school. So these things actually prevented him from going to school. Got the idea? He was really already afraid because he'll be questioned on participles. And at that time only, the situation happens like this. It's a very warm day, and it is better to keep himself out of the school rather than being there in the school. So remember this question and its answer. I've already given this question to you. So moving on with the next part. It was all much more tempting than the rule of participles, but I had the strength to resist and hurried off to school. But remember, Franz, he was not tempted by any of these things. Even though he had that idea of moving away from the school, all these things couldn't attract the attention of Franz that much. He was tempted, but he prevented himself from all these desires, and he hurried off to school because he was supposed to reach the school that day. So he thought he'll just prevent himself from moving away from the school, and he is right now hurrying off to school. The next paragraph. When I passed the town hall, there was a crowd in front of the bulletin board. So as I just moved on, what happens was that when I reached the town hall, I could see there was a crowd there in front of the bulletin board. This bulletin board, it's really important in this context. Bulletin boards are arranged in the different parts of the town where crowds usually come up, or as well the people gather together. So in this bulletin board, what happens is that, see, remember it is 1870s, isn't it? So in the bulletin board, already a war is going on. All sorts of news relating the war will be displayed in the bulletin board. That is the reason why people give importance to the information given there, because they can know what is going on there in the war session. Right now we have all sorts of media which actually helps us in knowing what is the after effect or what is going on there in the war field, isn't it? But at that time, very difficult to. So the people usually come to know about the things going on there in the war field through these bulletin boards. Now the idea. For the last 2 years, all our bad news had come from there. The lost battles, the draft, the orders of the commanding officer. So these are the things that we have already come across in the past 2 years. Because the war was about to start and the war was going on, it is continuing. It started in 1870 and ended in 1871, right? So for the last 2 years, what we are coming across is the news relating the lost battles. Then the draft. Draft here means plans. The country's plans to face the enemies. Plans, and then the orders of the commanding officers. At times orders comes up, you're not supposed to move to this particular border of your country. Like that, orders used to come up, right? So the same thing happens over here too. So what are the usual things displayed there in the bulletin board? That's it. It's another question appearing in this paragraph. What are the different things that appear in the bulletin board? The lost battles, the drafts, the orders of the commanding officers. These are the different things that was usually updated in the bulletin board. And I thought to myself, without stopping, what can be the matter now? See, now, what can be the matter? What can be the next news that is there in the bulletin board? I was really afraid. But right now, has he got the time to check all these things? No, right. It is very difficult for him to listen to all those, read and move towards the crowd and to read the instructions given there. He hadn't got much time at all. Moving to the next page. Then as I hurried by as fast as I could, the blacksmith, watcher, who was there with his apprentice? Apprentice is a trainee who works under the blacksmith. Reading the bulletin, called after me. Don't go so fast, Bab. Bab here refers to boy. He's just referring to him as Bab. Okay. You'll get to your school in plenty of time. So, the blacksmith and his trainee, while they were reading the bulletin board, they happened to see Franz hurrying off to his school. So, this blacksmith loudly announces, see, don't go so fast, you have plenty of time. So, what does it indicate? See, already it is mentioned that the boy is late that particular morning, isn't it? But right now he is telling that, see, you have plenty of time, don't worry at all. Let's see. I thought he was making fun of me and reached Monsieur Hamel's little garden all out of breath. So, all out of breath here refers to gasping because he was hurrying off to the school, isn't it? So, he was just thinking, was the blacksmith actually making fun of me because I'm already late to the school, isn't it? And in that thought, he hurried to the school and gasping. He was gasping because he was hurrying off to the school, right? He reached Monsieur Hamel's little garden. See, have a look. The school, or else his class is being referred to as little garden. Why so? A residential school it is. And this, usually in residential schools, even the masters are supposed to stay there. So this master, even he's having a garden in front of his class too. That is the reason why it is referred to as Monsieur Hamel's little garden. Okay, I hope the idea is clear for you. Moving on to the next paragraph. Usually when school began, there was a great bustle which could be heard out in the street. The opening and closing of desks, lessons repeated in unison, very loud, with our hands over our ears to understand better, and the teacher's great ruler rapping on the table. So, as he entered into the campus, what he understood was that usually when he reaches his school, what he could come across is there was a great bustle. Bustle means the noisy confusions. Usually noisy confusions are there as we come to school, isn't it? Every day, just recollect, as you enter the campus, before 8:15, all sorts of noise comes up, isn't it? It could be heard out in the street. As you come from the as you enter the Maravani's campus itself, you can listen to all these noises. What are the different noises that you hear? That is given next. The opening and closing of the desks. So we are not talking about the desk that is there in your classroom. The desks which can be opened and your books can be kept in. So what the children do is just to make a fun, they'll just open and close the desk repeatedly. Especially in the morning, while they come, they'll keep their books inside. For that, they'll open and then they'll be closing it. So all people doing it, that too, especially in the absence of a teacher. Naturally, noise is there, isn't it? Then, in some classes already, maybe the classes might have started, and because of that, the lessons repeated in unison. Unison means all together. All together, when the lessons are being repeated, especially when poems comes up, the teachers ask you to repeat it all together, isn't it? So such lessons are also being heard. That too very loud. The teacher always used to ask you to recite it all aloud, isn't it? Then, with our hands over our ears to understand better. And when you are supposed to recite that poem all together, what you do is you will just close your ears, isn't it? Why? Because you also will have to read along with others and you want to concentrate. So, those actions, naturally, while you repeat all together, all these things create noises, isn't it? So, usually when he comes to the class, he listens to such noises. That is the usual thing. So what happened that day, let's see. And not only these things, the teacher will be standing there, and what will he be having? He'll be having a ruler in his hand, rapping on the table. That is when the students make noise. The teacher will be having the ruler, the scale, or else, the stick that the teacher keeps. He'll be rapping on the table, isn't it? So what happens is that sound will also be heard. He wants the students to keep quiet. For that, naturally, he raps on the table. But now, it was all so still. So here in this paragraph, you have a question. What are the usual things that he comes across as he comes to the school? And what was the difference that he has noticed that particular day? So the first part of the answer we have already completed. The first part of the answer is this. Usually there was a great bustle, isn't it? Then the opening and closing of the desk, then the lessons repeated in unison. Not only that, the teacher having the great ruler with him or her in his hands, he or she will be rapping on the table. These are the usual noisy confusions that you come across. Now moving on to the second part of that question. The answer is given next. But now it was all so still. But all these noises are not heard anywhere. Why so? I had counted on the commotion to get to my desk without being seen. But of course, that day, everything had to be as quiet as Sunday morning. So what I usually do is, I always counted on means I always depended. I always depended on the commotion. Commotion means all sorts of noisy confusions that occur, that is mentioned in the previous sentence. So I always used to depend on all these disturbances to get to my desk without being seen. So no one will actually notice me coming late to the class. Why? Because all are busy making one noise or the other, and the teacher will also be engaged in making children quiet. So that is the usual situation. But I'll depend on these situations to keep myself hidden from others' viewpoint. Got the idea? I quietly enters the class without being noticed. That too, I depend on these noisy confusions. But this day it's not going to work at all. Why? Why? Because it was so quiet as a Sunday morning. If you ever visit your school on Sunday, for one reason or the other, you can very well understand that no noisy confusions will be there. Why? Because children are not there, isn't it? So, that particular day, the school was so quiet like that of a Sunday morning. Through the window, I saw my classmates already in their places, and Monsieur Hamel walking up and down with his terrible iron ruler under his arm. And through the window, when I had a glance of my classmates, what I could see is that they are sitting in their respective places, and my master is already there in the class, and he is having an iron ruler in his hands to control the class. I had to open the door and go in before everybody. So usually I don't do this, but this day I was supposed to open the door and I had to request my master to get in. So naturally you can very well understand that situation. The class has already started. Maybe here you're not supposed to be late to the school, isn't it? You're supposed to be there in the class before 8:20. Think that you reach here by 8:30. The class is already started and you are coming in front of the class. But the teacher is having no mind at all. She is continuing with the class and later on asking the question, "Oh, why did you come so early?" You might have faced that question, isn't it? So at that time, how blushed you will be, and you will be entering the class. All the students there in the class, you can see how they actually directs you to your own seat, isn't it? So how blushed you will be, you can understand that situation, isn't it? Same thing happens to Franz too. So what happens is that I had to open the door and go in before everybody. You can imagine how I blushed and how frightened I was. I'm sure that at least one of you might have faced such a situation where other teacher might have asked you that question, isn't it? Okay. So that was the thing that happened. Remember, this paragraph is the answer of the question that I told earlier. What was the usual things that the little boy, Franz, comes across while he comes to the class? What are the different changes that he noticed on this particular day? This question you have to answer based on the points given in this paragraph. I hope the idea is clear for you. Now moving on to the next paragraph. But nothing happened. See, I thought or else I expected that my master will be scolding me for being late. But nothing like that happened. Monsieur Hamel saw me and said very kindly, Go to your place quickly, little Franz. We were beginning without you. So that particular day, my master was so kind. I don't know for what reason it is. But anyway, my master, what he told me was this. See, go to your place quickly. It's better you go to your place quickly. We were about to start without you. So it's better you join the class quickly. That was the that was a comment that came from the master, which the boy didn't expect at all. What he expected was that this master will be scolding him, isn't it? I jumped over the bench and sat down at my desk. Not till then, when I had got a little over my fright, did I see that our teacher had on his beautiful green coat, his frilled shirt and the little black silk cap, all embroidered, that he never wore except on inspection and prize days. So what happens in this paragraph? You're given the idea on what happened. What is the next thing that he noticed as he entered into the class? What is the next thing that he came across? Let's see once again. The next thing that he came across was this. Before that, I jumped over the bench and I sat down there at the desk too. At that time, see, I was really frightened, isn't it? So when I got a little over my fright, means when I overcame that fear that I had in my mind, at that time I noticed one thing. What I noticed was that my master, or else Monsieur Hamel, what is he wearing? He had on his beautiful green coat. So on that particular day, he was wearing his beautiful green coat, then his frilled shirt, isn't it? The next page we have the information there. Frilled shirt and the little black silk cap, all embroidered. So that was the peculiarity that he had noticed at that time. And remember, why is it so peculiar? It's so peculiar because this man, the master, wore these costumes on inspection and prize days. Inspection here refers to examination days, or else when any sorts of inspections happen in that particular school. And prize days. Prize means important days. Okay, so he wore this costume, the green coat with a frilled shirt, then little black silk cap, and all these embroidered works there in his costume. The special costume, he used to wear it on inspection days or prize days, very important days. You know, whenever a celebration or else any sorts of programs comes there at school, how the teachers as well as the students come to this school. You can very well imagine, isn't it? Oh, you had already seen such situations too. So same thing happens over here too. Their master was wearing a special costume, which indicates that there is something special happening. Besides, the whole school seemed so strange and solemn. Not only this, all the other activities that usually happens is not there. So altogether a strange atmosphere and a very quiet atmosphere too, isn't it? But the thing that surprised me the most was to see on the back benches that were always empty, the village people sitting quietly like ourselves. So one more peculiarity I came across there in the class. What is that? Usually the last bench is vacant. No one usually used to occupy the last benches, but that particular day it was not empty. Instead, who all were sitting in the last bench? The village people were sitting there. Old Hauser with his three-cornered hat, the former mayor, the former postmaster, and several others besides. So you could see that the last bench was occupied by the villagers, the prominent villagers there. Old Hauser is there, then former mayor of the village is there, then the postmaster, former postmaster is also there. Not only these fellows, there are a few more too. Everybody looks sad. And one more thing is there, these people are sitting there, and at the same time, what about their emotions? They are really sad. So remember who all were sitting? It was the old Hauser, then the former mayor, then the former postmaster, and remember, they were really sad. And this old hoser, he had brought an old primer, thumbed at the edges. Old primer indicating the book that you learn in the beginning of your studies. Example, if it's English, it's the primer is the book which actually gives you the idea like A for apple, B for bat, like that you learn, isn't it? So that is a primer referred to here. Here, a French book actually. So an old primer, thumbed at the edges. Thumbed at the edges means the edges of the book are a bit damaged. See, you know, as you regularly use the book, what happens to the edges of the paper? It will be damaged or else it will be folded. Like that it happens, isn't it? So because of continuous use, it turns out to be folded. And he held it open on his knees with his great spectacles lying across the pages. So what was old Hauser doing over there? He had a primer in his hand and he was wearing spectacles too. He was reading the primer. Got the idea? So this paragraph tells you what are the changes that the boy noticed there in the class. As he got seated, the first change that he had seen is that his master wore a special costume that day. Green coat, frilled shirt, then silk cap, isn't it? Silk cap, all embroidered. That is the first change that he had noticed. The second thing that he had noticed is everything is so quiet and solemn. Then the next thing that he had noticed is the last benches which were usually vacant. Right now, what is happening? Right now, it is occupied by the villagers. Who all were the villagers? The villagers were, one by one, we have first person mentioned over here is all Hauser, old Hauser with his three-cornered hat, and he is sitting there with a primer of him and he is going through the primer. Then the second person mentioned here is the former mayor, and the third one mentioned here is the former postmaster, and so many other villagers too. So these are the changes that he comes across in the class. So today we have learned different questions answers to. The first questions that we have come across is, can we move on with the questions once again? The first question that we have come across today, the first page, take the first page. In the first page, what we have noticed, the first question is, what are the things that tempted little Franz from going to school? That was the first question that we have learned for the day. Then the second question is, what are the usual things that appear in the bulletin board? That part also we have learned. Then the next question that we have learned today is, what was the usual thing that little Franz comes across as he gets into the class? That is the next question. Then the last question that we have learned today is, what are the changes that he had noticed on that particular day?